Hello, and welcome to LGBTQ plus best practices for libraries. I'm Destiny Hamblin, and throughout this journey, we are going to be talking about what are best practices for libraries in the LGBTQ plus community. This includes school libraries, public libraries, and any other smaller libraries. These are general informational guides that will help you to be able to have some different resources and materials to help you with trying to become more inclusive to the LGBTQ plus community. So, in this presentation, we will talk about best practices that libraries can use for LGBTQ plus people. This will include collections, collection development, events, and creating a more inclusive experience for everyone. Our learning objectives are participants will learn LGBTQ resources that can be used in the library. They will learn best practices for collection and development of LGBTQ plus materials. They will learn event ideas for LGBTQ plus patrons and how to create a more inclusive library space. First, I think it's important to talk about who is included in the LGBTQ plus community. All of the people listed are included in this: lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, non-binary, and everyone in between. Basically, it's inclusive of everybody who is not cisgendered. Cisgender meaning that you have the gender that is assigned to you, and anyone who does not have the sexual orientation of straight. It includes everybody in between and questioning, and is just a very inclusive way to be able to say all of these people. Of course, there are many other avenues because everything is very fluid, but these are the main labels that are used in the LGBTQ plus community. So why is inclusivity important? Libraries are supposed to create a safe environment for all patrons, no matter their look, race, sexuality, gender. It should be a safe place for everybody, and it is what people see as a safe place. Schrader stated that time and time again, sexual minority adults say that as young people, they turn to libraries to try to find out something about LGBTQ realities and identities, usually until recently to little or no avail other than dictionary definitions. So there isn't a lot of content in the community, which we'll talk about why that is later, but it's really important for people to be able to see themselves in a really safe place like a library. Goyen said a data set of LGBTQ library users can both inform positive interventions and provide an evidence base to justify further marginalization and exclusion. So being able to take all of these, try to get data, makes it so that you can justify what you can buy and what you can get and what you can not get and what you shouldn't buy. So if you don't have these data sets, there's no way to persuade anybody to be able to buy materials to be inclusive. And Williams and Deo said the results of a study that they had put on indicate that many libraries supporting teacher education and library science programs have few or no holdings of recently published LGBTQ themed youth literature. Because it is not out there, it is so important to be able to talk about this, to try to find new ways to add it into the library space, because everyone deserves to be seen and everyone deserves to have a space for them to be able to find those resources. So I started with a couple of basic resources that are really great that can be added to databases or can be added to library websites for people in the LGBTQ plus community. GLAAD is a fantastic resource. They have a whole resource list that is a clickable link for you. It has a list of various different websites that people can go to be able to get more information. It's very important that we make sure that these websites are not blocked because a lot of libraries have a lot of firewalls that make it so that it's hard for people of the LGBTQ plus community to be able to go to a lot of these pages. So one of the main things that's really important is making sure you talk to the person that is in charge of the firewall and making sure that a lot of these websites are not blocked. That way people have the ability to go and look at these resources and know that they can look at these resources safely without having to go and ask to get it unblocked or going to ask to get it fixed, because everyone should have access to these materials. Another great website is the Trevor Project. They work specifically with people in the LGBTQ plus community and have a lot of great resources. And Planned Parenthood has a lot of resources for people in the LGBTQ plus community. These next resources are also virtual and online, but are more geared toward the library. There's the Q chat space, which is an LGBTQ plus friendly chat space for teens to be able to go to, and that way they have a safe space where they can chat. That is definitely something that would most likely be blocked, so making sure that that is not blocked through your firewall at the library. And then the Queer Zine Archive, which is a great resource that has zines that were created specifically for the queer community. And all of that is archived on that link, which is a really cool resource. And then the UW-Madison Gender and Sexuality Campus Center, which has its own database and is really great to be able to find even more resources, especially those that are in Madison. LGBTQ plus collection development. So these are best practices that you can use to help you with your collection development. So librarians should adopt a holistic strategy in providing library services and collections for and about LGBTQ plus users. So that means that we need to make sure that we're looking at things holistically, not just talking about books or media items or just programming. You need to look at all of those things. Everything should be included for the LGBTQ plus community. If it's included for people that are not in that community, there needs to be resources for them as well. And making sure that your collection, it's not just teen fiction, but also getting nonfiction and science materials, and making sure that you have LGBTQ plus authors in all of your sections that you can in the library. That way the representation is everywhere. In the classroom and in schools, making sure that you're building a collection for same-sex parents. Many times there are same-sex parents, and making sure that you have a couple of books in your library that definitely represent those types of parents and those types of communities are really important. You might get some backlash, but being able to have a strong collection policy is important to push back on that and say that we're trying to be inclusive for everybody, and that includes including a couple of these books. And having a strong collection policy that includes why you choose the books that are in the library. With the LGBTQ plus community, the biggest tip is to make sure you put it in your collection policy that you are getting books for everyone, not just people that are white, not just people that are cisgendered, not just people that are straight, but you're getting books that include everybody in the community. So that means that you explicitly put that in the collection policy, and therefore there can't be any pushback on that. You are picking these books because of this, because if you don't, then people are going to come in and try to get the books banned or removed, and then you have that policy in place to be able to help you make sure that those books stay, because they are for everybody in the community. I found some books that are really excellent that should be added to libraries. These are all recent books. They were on a list from 2021. So Ileana Reagan's Burn the Place, I Wish You the Best by Mason Dever, and How We Fight for Our Lives by Sadie Jones. That one's actually incredible because it's a true story and it's based on the AIDS epidemic, and it's somebody who is African American and queer. So it really brings about a lot of different representation. But any of those books would be a really great addition to your library. And here are 3 other books. Life as a Unicorn, A Journey from Shame to Pride and Everything in Between, Full Disclosure, which is a fiction novel, and Over the Top by Jonathan Van Ness, which is great because it is actually showing a celebrity in the LGBTQ plus community and talking about their story, because it is a nonfiction autobiography, which is really important representation for people to see. So making sure that you have an abundance of different places where these books can be nonfiction, fiction, teens, young adults, and children's books, making sure that that is represented holistically. LGBTQ plus event ideas and programming. So there's a lot of different programming that you can do, but some of the more popular ones are LGBTQ plus book groups, GSA programs, which are Gay Straight Alliance programs, bringing everybody together, LGBTQ read-alouds, Pride events, Stonewall exhibits from the Stonewall riots, and the LGBTQ film screenings. All of these things are really great to do, but the biggest thing is making sure these aren't just done in Pride Month in June, making sure that these are done holistically throughout the whole year, that you are celebrating the LGBTQ plus community as much as you are celebrating any other community, by making sure that they are represented all year long and not just in June. Here are some ways to create a more inclusive environment. First is policy protection, making sure that you have considered a strategic policy planning, which includes board policies, legislation, community development, professional networking, selection criteria, challenges, reconsiderations of materials, collection development, collection access, web access, library access, promotion and marketing, community advocacy, professional development, and library service charter. So basically, most of the things that we've talked about already, making sure that you are making your policy strong, so that way if anybody has a question or a concern, you can go back to your policy and say, this is what we've stated, this is what's important to us, and this is why we're keeping this book here, this is why we're doing this event, this is why we're doing this professional networking. It is important. Another option is optional diversity monitoring. You could have patrons say their sexual orientation, say their gender as an option for picking library cards, getting library cards, or just an optional survey that would give you more data to be able to go off of to see if you need more LGBTQ plus programming and materials. You could also do a survey just to talk about some of those options to see if your patrons are interested in those types of events and those types of activities and those types of books, and see if they feel like there's better representation. It should be optional though. even when they're picking out a library card, making sure that gender is an optional thing that they choose, making sure that, any other thing that is identifiable to their status is optional for them to pick out. Have multiple options instead of male and female, have them be able to write it out. And that way they can say they're non-binary, or they are transgender, or they are, anything in between. So just making sure that they have that option to be able to say what they are instead of keeping it very binary. Creating gender neutral bathrooms is also very important. Basically neutralizing your library in all ways gender. Having a gender neutral bathroom option is a great thing to be really inclusive to anybody. Having gender neutral programming, so making sure that your programming is not like geared towards girls or geared towards boys, but making sure that you have some options that anybody can enjoy that are not geared specifically for boys and girls. Making sure that library signups do not include gender. That includes programming signups, that includes signups for library cards and other signups that you'd have in your library. And then the opportunity for name changes. There are frequent times that the LGBTQ plus community has a really hard time getting their name changed, and getting their name changed from the government, and getting their gender changed from the government. So making sure that you are making that inclusive choice to say, hey, if you'd rather be called this name, if you'd rather have this name be on your record, that is okay. Just because it doesn't match your driver's license, that is still okay, and you can change your name and you can change your gender, and we don't judge. And we will call you by that name, or we will have that in our records, and that is fine. Because that's so important to make sure that everyone is included and that everyone has the opportunity to feel comfortable in the library. And then lastly is creating displays for LGBTQ books that are not just in Pride Month, but in any month. So we're not just celebrating in June, we're celebrating all of the time. Just creating an environment that's more normalized, where it's like, oh yeah, we're highlighting these people. Oh, we're highlighting these people. And it can be in any month. It doesn't just have to be in June. So, in conclusion, the LGBTQ plus patrons are an important part of the library. It is the librarian's job to make sure that there is an inclusive environment. Adding additional measures and resources to add inclusiveness can add more patrons and help to create a safe environment for everyone, because honestly, that's what we're trying to do as librarians, try to create a really safe space for anybody to be able to go and find resources to help them feel better, and to provide a space where they can feel like themselves. Here are my references. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that this has been informative for you to have more inclusiveness for the LGBTQ plus community.